friends, welcome to episode 197 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Doing pretty good. It's been a interesting week, and we've had some decent weather. Like, Michigan decided that it was going to be okay for just a little while.
Yeah, I mean, if decent, you mean, 8 degrees one day and 48 degrees the next day.
The fact that there's 48 degrees, I'm okay with that. And not thunderstorms,
Yeah, that's fair.
Or odd tornadoes or something,
Good old Michigan weather, yeah.
But otherwise, doing pretty decently. Last week, Friday, we had my secondary wrap-up to my original story from the weekend.
Yeah, a little follow-up, I guess, one shot just to continue our little road mission.
I didn't feel like splitting the party for a third time, or for a second time in the same adventure for longer.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it really paid off based on the length of the time, because we didn't get started until probably 6 o'clock? 6:30?
Oh, no, it was much later than
was
that.
it later than 7?
I didn't get there until like 6:20 or something.
Oh, that's true. So
there was some miscommunication about dinner.
Yeah.
You had cooked, and then I showed up with a sub.
Yeah, whatever. but yeah, I think timing and everything wrapped it up pretty well. And from at least from my perspective, I felt like it had a good finish.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a revenge quest for my character.
Yep.
And I got almost a max damage cone of cold to absolutely demolish my opponent.
Yep.
The other player that I was teamed up with, he and I both had the exact same sentiment, which was it was nice actually just having like a buddy cop mission, for the two of us.
Yeah.
And it was cool because our characters have kind of similar backstories. We come from the same region of your game world.
You're actually part of the world versus there's 3 out of the 5 who are from the world. The other 2 are transplants.
Yeah. So it was nice. It was nice to kind of like my character because of that sort of geographic kinship. Kind of sees him as a neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah.
And has a lot of respect for him just as a person, feels he's very honorable and whatnot. So, in character and out of character, it was really cool just to be like, hey, you and I should team up and whomp some ass.
and you guys did a great job.
And we did, yeah.
I think it was a lot of fun. I think it rolled pretty well. And it was very traditional. I feel like there was a chunk of it felt like traditional D&D, of just stomp the yard kind of feel. At the same time, there was a lot of planning involved.
Yeah, because we got some like almost political machinations in there to kind of like get our opponent out into the open and exposed where we could ambush him.
I didn't know how you guys wanted to handle that. I wanted to give you guys the options. So so it was good. It was one of those situations as a storyteller where I came into it like, well, I can throw options out, but I would rather kind of let things slowly evolve and see where the players want to take it. But not so slow that it was like, okay, you guys have had an exhausting day of work. It's Friday. It's the end of the week. You're beat. Like, your brain isn't on the game. How I got to get you engaged into it enough that you can be your characters to figure it out. Yeah. And I think you guys did that well.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So overall, for a breakup game, I think, and a split party, as our last show kind of talked about, I think it handled it well. It handled it real well.
I thought so too. It was a really satisfying ending to that plot line.
Good.
And then I've got my game coming up next weekend.
This weekend?
Well, that's what I mean, like this coming weekend.
Yes.
The next Saturday.
Correct.
That will occur chronologically is when it is.
Yes.
And I have, kind of as I was telling one of our players, like, I have precisely 1 spoon right now. And
sometimes you have to wiggle that spoon.
I'm going to gamble that spoon in the on the idea that running my game and spending some time with my friends and seeing smiles on their faces is going to give me a return on dividends of spoons. So
yeah, and I think you've got enough designed already in place to be able to let cards fall.
Yeah, it's not going to be the execution of the game that I've been fretting about. It's once again, I set a very high bar for myself. I wanted to build another terrain project and just have been struggling to keep myself above water mentally.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it.
So it's just been like, I could just sit on the couch and exist for a little bit and be cool, or I could expend energy and end up underwater tomorrow. You know?
Yeah.
So I even getting the game together has been a little difficult for me. The winter has not been.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've been dealing with this winter very often, or very, very well. So
yeah. I'm going to throw this out there because it literally flashed across my mind. We have another Storyteller Conclave member who has a set piece. Now, I know you already did your drawing. But in cases like this, and I'm just saying this in theory, I'm not saying anything, there's no reason why you couldn't reach out to a member of the Conclave and be like, hey, does somebody have a map for this? I have zero spoons.
I mean, I have a digital
map. You do. That's what I'm saying. You do.
Like, I might talk to you about actually using your map thing for this.
Easy done.
Because I do have an actual map that I was trying to duplicate in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, to do the layering that you wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, but it turned out to be a lot bigger of a project than I could handle, and I just haven't, like I said, I haven't had the energy for it. So I might reach out to you, but that's not for on the air. We'll talk about that later.
I've got some ideas already in my head for what you can think of.
But yeah. But we do have a show tonight.
We do have a show tonight.
Now, oddly enough, 1 year ago
in a day, right?
1 year and 1 day, because of how Wednesdays line up across multiple years. We did Stars Without Number.
Yes.
And honestly, it was one of our biggest shows.
Sinomine Publishing by Kevin Crawford.
Kevin Crawford,
who is a fellow Michigander.
Yeah,
He's up in Traverse City area.
Traverse City, yep.
That's if you're looking at them, and that's the pinky.
That's where cherries and wine come from.
That's where cherries and wine come from. That is very true. And now a ton of beer, apparently.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Stars Without Number is not the first in the series. He's published a ton of stuff.
Oh yeah. They're very prolific.
Very prolific. But Stars Without Number is the I would say is the progenitor in this series. And then this is the second in the series. So Stars Without Number was 2010. There was kind of a rebirth that happened later. And then the Kickstarter for Worlds Without Numbers, which we're doing tonight, was in 2020 and was funded for over $200,000 right off the bat. Which was great. And he's literally starting Cities Without Number right now. The Kickstarter's going on.
Yeah, we saw that, I think, last Wednesday he launched the Kickstarter for that.
Now, I'm going to stroke and wax a little bit here on Cities, because if you listen to this show, and you've listened to our previous show, and you like, Stars Without Numbers, you like Worlds Without Numbers, by all means, do yourself a favor, go jump on the Kickstarter and support this. Now, I'm not saying that because you're going to get something special, because Kevin is amazing. Kevin is actually going to be publishing the Cities on DriveThruRPG for free.
Yep.
That's like an SRD is going up there for this.
Sure.
Which I think is amazing. And in fact...
Well, he did the same thing with Stars Without Number and Worlds Without Number. There are free versions of those, but then there are deluxe versions of that book out there as well.
But one of the things that he's going to do on top of that is that if he hits a specific value, which I think is like... I can't remember. It's in the tens of thousands. It's going to be his millionth dollar. And in that, he will release... for free as well, how to kickstart all the things he's learned.
Okay.
And how to do it properly, which I think is beautiful. And he's going to throw that up on DriveThruRPG, which is a huge gift to the community for anyone who's thought about launching on their own, publishing, getting through the whole Kickstarter BS, because there's a lot that you have to deal with that. I think that's incredible. And then if he hits his 200,000 like he normally did, he's actually going to either Creative Commons or ORC or whatever to the system. Very nice. Just make it available, because he's never and the thing is he's never stopped anyone from basically grabbing the mechanics of this and saying, hey, go ahead and use the system, have fun with it, do whatever. He's never stopped anybody. So long as you're not mimicking his worlds, his NPCs, his things like that, go ahead and use the system. And 2 is great. I think that's incredible. I think it's wonderful. I think it falls under a lot of the things that most of the systems are trying to do right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, anybody who takes like 2 of his major flagship games for his brand and puts them up for free, like 90% of the rules are out there for free. On DriveThruRPG. You know.
So in my personal opinion, go support a fellow, effectively Conclave person who really appreciates the community, appreciates gaming, appreciates people building worlds and doing these things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I 100% stand behind that. And being said, this book is beautiful as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the overall like look and feel of the book. It's very, very clean, very professional.
Yeah,
the artwork is really good in it.
The artwork has that same feeling of immenseness, that you are small in an immense world.
Yeah,
which I think is another beautiful testament to like Stars Without Numbers had that same feeling, like you are a speck in the universe.
Yeah,
but this is still part of the universe. In this, you are a speck in front of this demon, in front of this monster, in front of this giant temple, but you're still there, and having your impact on it. And I think that's a beautiful statement that comes through the book, especially in the art.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the world itself is, and I look at the GYRE and I think Gyre.
Gyre? Gyre's my guess.
My brain can never really put it. Is the physical setting of the book is a world that is eons after man has effectively grown and fallen, risen and fallen and risen and fallen, and gone to the stars, gone to other dimensions, come back, whatever may be.
It feels a lot like Numenera in that. I get a really big Numenera vibe from it. Yeah,
100%. Except like Numenera kind of steps in and also adds other elements of question, like, is it only humanity here? Were there other influences that stopped? And this game doesn't discount that at all.
Sure.
They kind of reference that in a couple places where, sure, why not? You know, there's clearly some other factions involved in the process. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But effectively, there's been so many ages of rise and fall that we have the Venetian effect where everything's layered.
Yeah.
You don't know where old and new began, and we are in old again. So, in these times of trouble, as things have risen to a point, gods of men have come up, these heroic beings that have come from other stars, other dimensions, to return and try and retake what humanity was in some form, and heroes rise against that, which eventually causes another breakdown in a good way. But I have to read this paragraph because I found it, again, so poetic.
Right.
And so, like, each part of the prologue pulls you further and further in, and it's a single page of poetry. Yet our kings are beggar princes at best, and our sages but stumbling children. So deep is the past of the latter earth that no one truly understands what has gone on before, or can lay sure hands on the legacy we have inherited. We wield strange powers we no longer comprehend, and summon forces that were never meant for our petty purposes. We live in a world haunted by those who came before us, and we suffer for the sins of their deeds.
Of their dead.
Yeah. So, and you look at that and you're like, okay, first off, beautiful poetry, but such a succinct way. Like, if you are opening a game, that is a crawl.
Yeah, that's really
and you're
good.
like, ooh, like I could see that in the way, like even in like the Conan slow text. You know,
yeah.
Well, thunderous music is very lurching in the background, but it's this ominous tone that's just drumming in front of you, and it does very much feel like Numenera, but like from an outsider's perspective, it kind of feels like someone romantically looked at Morkborg and said, I see beauty in the dead of this world, and then handed it a wilted rose. And you're like, okay, this is beautiful. I'm going to take a little beauty of this, but it's harsh.
Wow. Nothing has made me want to wear black lipstick and listen to My Chemical Romance more than what you just said to me.
But it's true. I love the poetry of how this book is written, just as much as I loved the poetry that I saw within Stars Without Numbers.
Yeah,
and it's always wonderful when you can, from the very first page, you're just drinking in all of this, and you're like, okay, I'm in.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
It's going to be harsh. Yeah, there's going to be problems. Let's get this down.
But when you just read the intro to a book and you can close your eyes and you can already envision your characters there, you can already envision the type of stories that you want to tell there, That's real, true inspiration, and that's beautiful. It's beautiful that the flavor for this game, can do that so easily and be so evocative.
Yeah. Duncan from Dragon Age, that voice, the tone. I agree. I totally agree, Knox. I totally agree. But opening a book and having that feeling right set before you, gives you pleasure to step into it, and then literally the book, without a doubt, immediately tells you, "I am OSR. Welcome to the pain."
Oh, yep.
Which is, there's no Stars Without Numbers. I'm just going to say this: there's a huge portion of this mechanics. Go back and listen to Stars Without Numbers, our episode there. You're going to hear a lot of the repetitiveness here. There are some shifts. Not a lot.
Yeah. In fact, the two systems are designed to be compatible with one another.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. I know we got I think one of Nevim's questions this week was, are the two systems compatible? And I'll go right ahead and I'm going to answer it right here from the get-go. Yeah, they are. They were designed that way, and you can absolutely grab both of these books and run a really cool space fantasy, Star Wars style or Spelljammer style. You absolutely can do that, and it takes very little work to do so.
Yep.
So, just a reminder, when we're talking about, OSR, we're talking about games that kind of lend themselves back to the fledgling days of tabletop role-playing, the first and second D&D and whatnot, where hit point pools were low, life was cheap, you were encouraged to avoid conflict and come up with creative solutions, because getting in straight-up heroic slogs with your enemies typically resulted in lots of dead on either side.
Yeah.
Quickest way to make a new character, honestly, was to get in a fight.
True attrition style war, except you don't have an army. And that's the difference.
Right.
Merkborg basically says make another character and move on.
But it also lends itself a lot to, I would almost say that Powered by the Apocalypse style of theory of, play to find out. OSR-style games are not designed necessarily for narrative play in the traditional sense of, we're just here to tell a story, but rather to hand you the toolkit to hex crawl across this countryside and not get involved in intricate, political machinations, but rather to go out and be an adventurer.
Yeah.
To see what the world has to offer and pit yourself against it.
It's not to say that there isn't political intrigue going on there.
Oh, sure.
But your characters are not directly involved in the intrigue. They are pawns within the process and get to experience the meat and the things that happen in the actual mechanics versus the floating tones of the world.
Right. I get the feeling very strongly that in an OSR game, you're not the main character. You're a character, definitely.
Yeah.
And you're an important character, but you ain't the main character. You know?
Yeah.
You don't have plot armor.
Yeah. There was, I can't remember the name of the game, but there was a digital game when I was younger where the game begins with these two generals basically talking about the battlefield from different perspectives. It looks like they're at the same table, but it's clear that they're one's in a tent here and one's in a yurt somewhere else, and they're moving pawns on the same board set before them of their own things. And then at some point it's you see them both slide pieces to a common point, and the camera comes in, and then it pushes through a fog that pushes to the actual field down to you. That's you.
Yep.
And now you realize the story is up there. Your story begins here.
Yep.
Yep. You don't get to be
the main characters are above your paid grade.
Correct.
Yeah.
A lot of times people have described OSR games as linear games because effectively it's like being in a historical in a historical movie. The outcomes are bigger than you, but there's still a story to be told within the framework of the outcomes.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
And I think there's a real delight in not having that sort of main character save the world sort of syndrome of the biggest problem I have to deal with is how are we going to cart this gold out of this little podunk dungeon?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start off talking about character creation.
I don't see why not.
It's very similar to Stars Without Number, but of course we're not going to rely on you to have gone back and listened to a completely different episode.
Right. We'll give you it.
The basis here, this Worlds Without Number and Stars Without Number before it are essentially a I almost want to call it a watered down version, but I'm not sure that's true, of 3rd edition D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the previous episode, I described it as D&D if everybody just chilled out.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean your numbers are all a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is just +1s or +2s, and it's very manageable from a number standpoint. You're not hitting these 20s, 30s, 40s on your dice all the time. It's like if you hit a 12, you're doing great.
Mm-hmm.
You know? You've got the same 6 attributes that you're used to in Dungeons & Dragons. So you've got Strength, Con, Dex, Int, Wisdom, and Charisma.
Mm-hmm.
However, again, once your stats are all a lot lower, your modifiers are only going to go up to +1 or +2, and the dead zone in the middle, where like in 5th edition D&D, it's 10 and 11 that don't give you a modifier. There are, where is it? There's a whole range in the middle that just, I think it's like 8 to 14 don't have any modifiers.
Yeah, it's a giant swath of space.
You can do standard array, but they encourage you to roll your attributes.
Yeah.
If you do roll your attributes, you get to replace one of them with a 14.
Okay. So you'll always have something that's a +1.
Exactly. You'll always have at least something that's good in there. We have backgrounds then you'll choose, because you weren't always an adventurer all of your life. Your backgrounds give you a free skill at rating 0, which essentially you have some skill in it, some education, but it doesn't not enough to confer a bonus.
Yeah, you're not a professional at it. Yeah.
And again, these represent sort of your past experience. Your background will also dictate a lot of where your skills come from. Your class actually has very little to do with like the main brunt of your character. A lot of that comes from your background.
Yeah, and again, that I think that there's a lot more systems that are leaning toward that direction, which I like. I really like it.
Yeah, I really like that too. So not only do they give you free skill there, but then there's kind of like a little advancement tree within your background, and you'll either choose or randomly roll. Again, they encourage you to randomly roll. Some of those other skills that kind of come off of there, and you'll have those at I think up to rank 1s and rank 2s you can get out of that. It may actually also result in some attribute increases if you roll randomly, which is kind of neat. Then after choosing your background, you choose a class. Now, unlike Dungeons & Dragons, you don't have your intricate classes of, like fighter and ranger and monk and bar, all those intricate little, very narrowly defined jobs. You've got very broad classes.
Yep.
Warrior. Basically, your advancement chart, it gives you a higher roll for your hit points. You're going to give you a bigger attack bonus. You add your character level to all of your damage. And you get a free combat-related focus. Focus are a little bit like feats or edges in other games.
Yep.
And then you get one special ability, and that's essentially that you can negate a hit against you once per scene, or guarantee a hit that would have missed otherwise.
Okay.
And that's it. Like, that's the whole warrior thing.
Which I think it's simplified and fantastic. It moves things through because there's less to think about. Yeah. Within the character.
Exactly. And it doesn't so narrowly define your character is enough to pigeonhole them.
Right. It's funny. It's like it's not my job. It's just what I do. And I that concept of like I am a cleric, I'm a warrior cleric. Okay, is that your job? No. What's your actual job? I'm a bartender. Okay, so you're good at talking with people. Well, yeah. Okay, so what makes you a warrior cleric? Well, I can cast spells. Like I know how to do that.
And I really like this particular god.
Right.
There you go.
Okay. But that's the cool part about it is it doesn't give you a position. It just gives you abilities to stack on top of the background of the individual.
Yeah, and we'll expand upon that a little bit later because part of this discussion is how this dovetails into other D&D properties.
Yeah.
And how to convert them over. And part of that how to convert stuff over is how to essentially convert over those narrow character classes into the broader character classes available here in Worlds Without Number.
Yep.
So
there's three others.
Your other character classes are expert, and that's kind of your
skill junkie?
Yeah, skill junkies. They're jack of all trades. They're skill gurus.
Right.
And they get a lot of like bonus points, bonus skill points when they level up and whatnot. So
yeah, I feel like this is a professions class.
Yes,
where this person didn't do the other things. They put their head into either being a professional by voice, being a professional by physique, or being a professional by learning.
Well, it's called expert.
Yep.
Expert at what?
Right. Exactly.
You know? Then there's the mage. Mm-hmm. Now the mage is about as close to a narrow character class as you're going to get. Being that basically their one thing that they focus on is magic. That's their trick. That's their whole advantage. They get access to magic. But, you know, much like everything else, spellcasters can and do tilt the balance of things because they can essentially break reality.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a strong OSR vibe, because back in the day, wizards were ultimately powerful and often change things heavily within a scene. And they were
fragile and narrow of focus.
Right. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the way that they were describing magic, or adjustments in magic in the game, was don't step on another's toes, basically. Like, if something were to grant an ability that effectively a warrior should be doing, it shouldn't be a wizard's thing.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just doesn't... Yeah, the mage should not be able to cover every base with their spells.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to cover every base, but what they will do is they will cover a base that their magic is designed to, because you have what are called traditions, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But whatever your tradition is, it covers a narrow slice of adventuring life very well.
Yeah.
And then you've got your adventurer, and the adventurer is an interesting class because it's not a class.
Right.
It is a you pick two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go to a restaurant and it's like, oh yeah, here's 3 things that you can pick of, but you pick 2.
Yeah.
You know, you want a soup, a salad, or a sandwich.
Right.
You know, the adventurer is the you pick 2 class. It's a partial warrior, partial expert, partial mage. Now, interestingly enough, you can be 2 partial mages.
Okay.
You can pick mage twice.
Okay.
But different traditions for each.
Cool.
And so you technically get like 2 of them, but they're both watered down.
Yeah, you suck at both, but you can do both.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which reminded me a lot of 7th Sea.
Exceptionally so, because it's the half-blooded.
Yes,
yep,
exactly.
The same thing where you're half-blooded, you have a bit of both. It costs you a lot, but effectively you will never achieve a higher point than your full-blooded, compatriots.
But if you can teleport and sling fireballs, that's something.
That is something.
Yes.
That is something. So.
Exactly. After that, you choose foci. Like I said, focuses are a lot like feats or edges in other games and whatnot. They're the special tricks that make your character do the thing that they do.
Yeah, and I was trying to look at it, and I really couldn't... I was thinking about the advancement curve on this and how foci build, and it's really not that high. If I remember correctly, it's very low. So it's not like your traditional games where you might end up with like 5 or 6 of these based on your class, and now you've got to remember all these neat little tricks you do by the time you get to 5th level. Mm-hmm. It's a stack of tricks, and it's like, oh god, I can do any of these tricks.
Well, what I like about them is not only is it a very focused list, and all of them seem relatively powerful and unique, but there are 2 levels to most of them.
Yeah,
and so if you like what you're getting out of a focus, you can double dip into it and get an even more powerful version of that focus then, and be exceptional at it.
Yep.
Which I really liked.
Yep.
Then, almost over character creation, you take a free skill. Because, hey, we're not always just adventurers.
I love that add-on. I think that should be in every game.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved that was one of the things that that Overwatch would do in his games is everyone had an outside skill.
The Mad Elf does that too.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, what's the one thing your character does that has nothing to do with combat or lore?
Yep.
I collect 20th century luchador magazines. I'm an expert at those, and I have early editions of them. I
always love the one that I picked in the Mad Elf's game, which was my character is an expert at laundry. Yeah. I can get any stain out of any clothes.
Yeah. Yep. I love that kind of stuff. I think more people should do that. I got to make a note about that because I got to put it in the thing you should try in your next game. I got to put that in.
Yeah, you do.
So.
Yeah, then you take an equipment package, and you figure out, like, all your drive stats, your HP, your saving throws, etc., etc. Now, some of you who are astute and know that we are talking about a fantasy game that sits adjacent to Dungeons & Dragons, note that we never talked about picking a race or a species or anything like that.
Nope.
Worlds Without Number assumes a human party. It's a very human-centric game. Now, if you do pick up the deluxe edition of this, and I hope I'm not wrong about this, I believe I'm correct here. The deluxe version offers meta-human templates in it for playing things like elves and dwarves and gnomes and lizard folk and such like that.
Correct. And also, there's nothing to say that you couldn't also go to the other systems. Stars Without Number has other races as well in its deluxe edition.
Yeah, alien races.
And again, they would be compatible, and you could make them just as explained.
Exactly. And basically all you have to do for that is you just spend one of your focuses during character creation on essentially buying that metahuman origin, and there you go, you're an elf now. They do offer a bit of a stat adjustment for being a different species. That's more akin to what their physical form represents for you. So you can get some extra bonuses and whatnot off of that, which is why it costs a focus. And that's it. That's all character creation. Pretty simple. Roll up, get some skills, and get some equipment, and you're done.
Yeah.
Now the mechanics, like I said, are basically like 3rd edition D&D, but just if everyone relaxed about it. So you got the same core attributes. Low ones provide a penalty. High ones provide a bonus. You've got 3 different types of saving throws. Physical, mental, and evasive saving throws. Very much like your old fortitude, willpower, and reflex saving throws.
Mm-hmm.
Most of your rolls are going to be the die that's appropriate to it, plus your skill, level, bonus, whatever, plus an attribute modifier, versus a difficulty class.
Okay.
So it's exactly the same as it is in D&D.
Sure.
Okay. In D&D 5th edition, you've got a D20 plus what you've got what you've got in the skill for your proficiency modifier, plus an attribute. So if you're rolling athletics plus dex plus a D20, right? It's
okay.
the exact same here. That is the same formula you're using. So I know we're throwing out a lot of words for it, but if you know how to play D&D, you can pick up Worlds Without Number immediately. It is a class-based, level-based system. However, like I said earlier, all your numbers are more or less toned down. Your power curve is a lot flatter. Your skills are going to be represented in basically just 0 to 5 rating. Or untrained, if you don't have it. Your attribute modifiers are 0 between... Oh, here it is. Between 8 and 13.
Yeah, that was the...
And your attribute gives you 0. 4 to 7 is a -1. 3 is a -2.
Right.
Only the extremities, 3 and 18, give you a 2. Everything else is a 1 or a 0.
Which is great. It makes it really easy to remember.
A lot of your derived stats are going to actually be the best of one of your 2 attributes. So it's a lot less punishing on what we call dump stats.
Yeah, so like if my con is terrible, my strength may be great, and that takes care of it.
Right. You may not be the buffest person, but you are exceptionally fit.
Yes.
So,
or I may not be the most, jinky, dexterous, but I can think my way.
I can think very well on my feet, ergo my initiative doesn't suck because it's the best of dex or int.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that allows for a lot more flexible characters. Experience is measured in single points rather than hundreds or thousands of experience points.
Which is so nice.
It really is.
Again, a very 7th Sea thing as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just drama.
Yeah.
Like, what do you have at the end of the game? How much drama has you got?
I think it's like 3 experience points to reach level 2.
Yeah. Well, it's very straight, very, very easy.
And then most of your the only thing that really kind of differs from D&D, whereas D&D uses a D20 to resolve everything.
Yeah, this uses D6, D20, and D8, and
yes.
I think that's it. Just those 3
for very particular things.
Yeah.
So resolving skill checks is always 2d6.
Yep.
Plus your modifiers. And then your target numbers are going to be a lot lower as well. You're not going to hit like 20s in target numbers and whatnot.
Right.
For combat, you go back to your d20.
Easy
so it's
enough.
old familiar ground there. And for initiative, it's a d8.
Yep.
And your whole initiative is actually per side, too.
Yeah.
You take the highest initiative modifier in your group, roll a d8 and add it.
And then boop, boop.
And that's your initiative, you know. Skill checks, like I said, are 2d6, plus your skill level, plus any applicable attribute.
And you're not going to have high numbers there.
Yeah. 14 is considered heroic or impossible.
Yeah, because you're maxing out at 12 plus whatever modifiers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when your attribute modifier is maybe a +1, +2 if you're exceptional.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still looking at boxcars to hit that. So
Yeah.
it can afford to be a lot number. Having a low skill or 0 in a skill is pretty common. It's not really like you don't need huge modifiers because your numbers aren't huge.
Yep.
So you really should kind of spread your character out a lot because it at least allows you to have some level of proficiency in things. But, if you really stack stuff up during character creation, if you really, really, really focus and specialize, you might end character creation with a skill at +2.
Which is incredible for that one thing you do
That's where our numbers are at,
Right.
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 Saving throws are going to be a d20. Base difficulty class. Now, I really like this one. All difficulty classes for your saving throws are the same.
Okay.
They're standard. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
right, that's right.
something that the storyteller decides. Your difficulty class for a saving throw is 16 minus your character level minus the best of one of your attributes.
According to the check.
For your physical saving throws, it's going to be the best of either your strength or your con. Mental is going to be either the best of your charisma or wisdom. And then evasive is the best of your int or your dex.
So 16 goes to 15 inevitably, on a savings throw, and then in most cases you'll probably have at best a +1 in one of those things. So what your DC for saving throw then goes to a 14?
A 14, yeah.
Which you're rolling savings throws as 2d6.
D20s.
Or d20, I'm sorry.
D20.
So your odds are pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're overall for a savings throw, it's pretty good.
I mean,
it's harsh at the beginning curve.
Yeah, you're starting off with a 35% chance to pass the saving throws, as a level 1 character.
Right. Which honestly is not bad. It means you've made it this far.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No, I like that. I like that.
The magic system I thought was pretty interesting. So it's very specialized. It does not have a huge, you go into the magic system of most fantasy games, especially comparing it to 5th edition D&D, right? And it's 80 pages in the back of the book are the entire spell thing, right?
Yeah.
So there are 5 main traditions in here, and they each get a double-page spread.
Yep. And that's it.
That's it. So we're talking about 10 pages for just the spells, just the magic. And then a couple pages to kind of explain how the magic system works.
Yep.
And that's it. That's the whole thing.
Which is grand.
Yeah. Very easy to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And not a lot of, min-maxing to do. I find especially, with Dungeons & Dragons, you end up with a lot of, analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
I'm playing a wizard in your game.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, the good news is I'm playing a theme wizard. So it's very easy for me to just be okay, which one of y'all does cold damage around here? And then I just pick that spell. But were I not, man, were I trying to be some sort of, optimal about how I'm playing that wizard, the choices are just endless. Just absolutely endless. So many things you can combo together, but not like this. So you've got your mage class, or if you pick an adventure that has a partial, at least a partial mage to it, you are eligible to take a tradition. Now, magic goes... There's kind of 2 different branches to magic. There are arts, and there are high magics.
I'll be totally honest. I did not look at the section at all except for the headers, and I went, what? Like, literally, maybe go like, huh?
All right. So how it goes is this.
So,
First off, it is Vancian casting. If you know, you know. Vancian casting is what Dungeons & Dragons does. Okay. So it's the system wherein you have spell slots, you prepare those spells ahead of time, and you can only cast the spells that you have prepared a certain number of times a day.
Right.
Okay. There's no magic points or mana or anything like that regenerates. It's you prepare, you cast what you've prepared until you're expended for the day.
And then you prepare for the next day.
You rest and you do it all again.
Right.
Okay. That's Vancian casting.
Right.
All right. So this is Vancian casting. However, again, just like everything else in the game, the numbers are a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to be preparing, at first level, you're going to have, like, one spell slot.
Mm-hmm.
You can prepare, I think, as many as 3 spells, and you can cast one of them once.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
There you go.
Have a nice day.
Right. There's the spell levels max out at 5th level.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you're not talking about like 9 whole tiers of spells. One interesting thing is though is you don't have to tier, like there's no tiered casting. I.e., in Dungeons and Dragons, you have like 5 first level spells, 4 second level spells, 3 third level spells, 2 fourth, and a 5th.
Right.
It doesn't do that in this. You just can prepare X number of spells. You can cast X number of spells, and the highest level spell you can know is this. Go to town.
So if I have 5 slots,
you can fill them all with 5th level spells.
If you wanna. I think that's grand.
Yeah.
I like that design because it opens up to allow a player to feel the way they need to feel for a day, but also run the risk of being completely ill-prepared.
Well, sure. But again, it's something we'll kind of talk about in a little bit when we start talking about kind of how the flow of the game and whatnot.
Exactly.
Is that there isn't that expectation of like 8 to 13 encounters. Like,
not
the resource attrition that takes place in Dungeons & Dragons doesn't take place in this game.
Not in the least.
So you might look at that and go like, well, what do you mean? Like, a 10th level mage only gets 6 spells. Well, yeah, but you don't need that many. If you're blowing 6 5th level spells a day, like, you have some problems bigger than how many spells you have.
Right.
Right. Now there are like I said, I think it was like 5 different traditions that are in this book. I don't know if there's any expansions, actually. I didn't look into that.
No, I can't say. So,
but we have the High Mage,
right,
which is sort of like your general Arcanist style stuff. A lot of like I saw Time Stop on that one.
Right.
Only it had his name like it was like Abdicate Temporal Presence. It was really great.
Yeah.
There's a Necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
It describes itself very much as someone who just kind of studies the ebb and flow of life and death.
Yeah.
It doesn't come across as, like, fundamentally evil as most necromancers do, but the flow of life and death is kind of your plaything. That is the material you manipulate. There's the Elementalist, who, much like the necromancer, manipulates life and death. Elementalists manipulate the elements around you. Fire, air, earth, water, etc., etc. These are going to be kind of more like your blaster casters.
Yeah.
They have Fireball on their list,
Yeah.
You've got the Healer.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting thing about the Healer is that it's all, it's only a partial tradition. There's no actual spells. It's all arts.
Okay.
Okay. And then you've got the Vowed.
Okay.
As in promised.
Ah, thank you.
And the Vowed are basically your monk class. They focus their magic inward to perfect their body. Gives them really great unarmed damage, etc., etc. If you're looking to play a monk, the Vowed Mage is maybe something you want to take a look at. If you're going to go for that, like, spiritual, more than just a bare-knuckle brawler, if you really want to go into that whole, like, I focus my ki and punch a hole through God sort of thing.
Okay.
And then I did notice that in the back of the book there are, and I believe, again, this is a deluxe thing, there are some setting-specific, some gyre-specific traditions. that again really reminded me of the 7th Sea magic, because they're region specific.
Yep.
This is what the people of this region do, and it's shape shifting, and this is what the region of this people do, and it's all mind magic, like psionic sort of stuff. You know, gave me real 7th Sea vibes.
Yeah, there's a lot that mixes in this that triggers great world building in my mind. But at the same point, leaves a lot of blank space.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's a section that talks about building a tradition, building a magic tradition.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, if a player's just like, I had an idea like X. Like, I really like Porte from 7th Sea. Is there some way that I could do that in the system?
Cool, let's talk. There's absolutely a framework for building it. There's
100%.
framework for making magic items in here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, we keep talking about arts.
Yeah, that's right.
I kept referring to those. So arts are cool. They're a little bit like meta magic and cantrips all together. They're little things you can do to manipulate how you cast spells and what happens after you cast a spell. You have a bank of what's called effort points. And those of you who know Stars Without Number, effort's the same system that they used for their psionics. And so in this, you can expend effort to activate one or more of your arts, and your arts all do different things. So they'll do things like, I want to just have the duration for this spell last indefinitely, so I'm just going to invest an effort point into it, and now it's just not going to end until I decide that it does. I won't get that effort point back until it does.
Right.
But that just puts a little knot on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it ties it to reality.
Right. Or I want to be able to re-roll any ones I rolled on the damage roll for this spell. So I'm going to throw a little effort into it, you know? Those are basically what you get out of arts. And like I said, healing, the entire healing tradition all works as arts. There's no actual spells, so it's all expend effort to get an effect.
Which makes sense. It binds you to it, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. So that's the rules. Y'all just learned how to play Worlds Without Number. Congratulations. You want to talk a little bit about the world building?
Yeah, and I'm going to start this and preface this with basically saying that a lot of this was a great translation from Stars Without Number. It is robust. It is 206 pages worth of world building. And if I will say that again, it's 206 pages of world building.
I got to admit, I am so glad that we have kind of established a divide and conquer cadence for these because
systems.
You know, I dive right into the system.
I do.
I know you skip the system entirely. You're like, Sarah's got that covered. I'm going right back to the GM.
I skimmed quickly through it to make sure that I wasn't going to miss something, and actually looking through it very quickly, I was just like, oh, I remember this. Oh, this is something new. Pause for a second. Nope, got to keep going.
And then I flipped back just to see what was beyond the game rule section, and then I just I scrolled through the PDF and was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't envy your job. This is so much.
There is, I will say this, and I'm going to say this again later to remind people, is that if anything, just like Stars Without Numbers, if you are a fantasy person who likes doing world building, do yourself a favor and go pick up this book. Buy the deluxe edition on Drive-Thru-RPG, because this can be whole cloth lifted right out and given to anything.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, a lot of people are just like, oh, I really want a good book on world building.
This is it.
There
you go.
Just buy this.
Congratulations.
I'm not saying that there aren't people who write beautiful books on world building, but put this on the shelf amongst your, physician's desk reference guide and everything else. There is so much in here, and it is so well put together that if you don't know what you're doing, in 2 paragraphs he will explain it, make it very palatable, and give you advice, and then give you charts to roll on for it.
There's so many charts.
It felt like the Dungeon Master's Guide from 2nd edition.
Yeah.
Done better. Because we've had years of experience. And Kevin does such a wonderful job of putting it together and then giving you nice, beautiful, simple charts to basically say, hey, I've talked about these tags, which are basically just tropes. They're ideas that you take 2 things, you slap them together, and you have something created. This is to take a tag, a downtrodden peasant community that is a mining enclave. So
Cool.
I take those two things, I roll on the charts for both of those, and I have descriptive details of both, and I instantaneously have a community in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I know what they're going to react to and everything else. Can I go deeper? Certainly. But only when the players get there.
Yeah.
And then the moment the players decide to invest, I can invest myself and just look through the charts that I want to use.
And honestly,
or not.
there's charts for everything in there. So it's
Yes.
like when you do get there, it's like, okay, well, what political organizations are in this downtrodden mining town? Roll, roll, roll. Okay,
but not
now I
just-
know what their political structure looks like. What are their major exports? Roll, roll. Like,
Yeah, if you want to do that, you can
Yeah.
do that. At the same time, it's not just charts, it's actually explaining to you, okay, now that you have X and you're moving to Y, these are the things that move that into play. Here are why the motivations go that way.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of something like this, here's kind of an explanation for doing it, and if you'd like to lean into that more, roll on this chart and it will help direct you. And it goes beautifully page by page that way.
Yeah.
In eloquent writing. One of the greatest sections that I want out on a poster board and handed to every single DM who's about to run a game that gets put up before the game is in this book again.
we need one of those 1950s PSAs.
Yes.
Of like the dude in the smoking jacket being like, "So, Tommy, you're thinking of running a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Dude, I so want to do
You've
that.
probably got some questions about the things that are going to go on at that table."
Well, sit down. We're going to go through the do's and don'ts. You have a duty as a game master to... And seriously, it puts it in black and white what your responsibilities are as a storyteller, what your responsibilities are as a player. And they're simple. They're easy. If everyone looks at these and agrees, you move on. And if these are not as simply exquisite as they can be, I don't know any other way to put it. People try to dance around some of these. We've talked in other game systems where they explicitly tell you, like, don't be a jerk, you know, and things like that. The games that do that are teaching players how to play the game. Not mechanics, not how to role play, but how to be etiquette at a table.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that
Table
simple.
etiquette, yeah.
And then the things that are forgotten. Because when you're looking through mechanics, you don't think about it. It says, oh, if there's a skill check, you roll. This is what you roll. No. You say what you're doing, and the DM makes a decision on whether you roll. And the truth of this game is because the variances are so close that if you look at the player and you say, okay, are you skilled in it? Yeah. What's your skill rating? +2. Okay, it works.
Yeah, this is routine for you.
You're not gonna make them roll on it any more than you would for someone who had a +26 in thievery.
I remember Stars Without Number having an explanation in there where it's like, okay, so you've got a trained ace pilot that is landing your ship. Don't make them roll for landing the ship. They do this every day. They've done this hundreds, if not thousands, of times. Are they trying to land it in low visibility in a storm? Okay, I mean, maybe make them roll, but like it shouldn't be a high difficulty.
No,
just to see if they jam a landing gear and need to take a day to repair it.
But that's only like you're cutting through fog. It's a challenging landing.
Yeah,
you're feeling a little tension. Give me a roll.
Exactly. It's the same thing here. Is this the thing your character does? Then they do it.
Wash lands the plane 1,000,000 times, but the one time that he's being chased through a fog onto a dense planet, so the gravity's a little tighter, he's like, give me a roll. I'm a leaf on the wind. I'm a leaf on the... He's actually worried.
Yeah.
He is seriously worried.
Yeah.
And everybody notices he's worried, and a roll hits the table.
Yes.
But up to this point, you've never asked that player for a single piloting roll, but now the whole table knows it matters.
Yep.
And that's this game kind of reminds you of that, to stop your players from being like, oh, I rolled a 26 on my stealth. I didn't ask you for a roll. Oh, I'm going to stealth into the building. Okay, just explain to me what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, let's stop pre-rolling dice for me. That's not that. What am I supposed to be here for? Do I need to be here?
Right.
You know, and the other thing that
I used to have players that would do that at my table. I rolled a 17. Cool. On what?
Yeah. What were you doing? Well, I told you a second ago. I was literally talking to another player. I have no idea.
They wouldn't even tell me. Like, if I have a particular player in mind doing an old game. Literally, would just be like, I rolled a 17.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Good job.
Yeah. That's
good job.
Roll. Yeah.
Anyway, what I was saying was...
Yeah, exactly. He then goes into a couple paragraphs on social skills. And I feel that this section needs to be extracted, examined, and everyone needs to read it a few times. Because it does it properly. It talks about social characters who invested heavily in social. These are skills that are often glazed over in most books as just another skill, like pottery, or physical healing, or athleticism, But they're not. Because being good at social things is part of the role play. It's part of the interaction at the table, but not every physical player is able to meet that. But if my power fantasy isn't being good with a weapon, it's being good talking, but I can't do that as a player, that's still a power fantasy. And just like the pilot, if I'm skilled to the teeth on that, most of my interactions are going to go well. People are going to agree or negotiate with me in some way. And it requires the same thing. And one of the sections that I read about this was I felt was a good way of wrapping it up was, remember that social skill levels, no matter how high, are not mind control. They can't get people to do things they would never normally do unless overwhelming situational pressure is involved. Conversely, they're also completely impossible to block with magic. So an expert con man can get next to an imperator. There is no magical bar or savings throw that's going to prevent him from persuading a demigod of a seemingly good idea.
Yeah.
And that's the truth, is that your player may not be able to bring to the table all of the knowledge and wittiness that a character with +2 in a skill, who is intelligent and charismatic on their character sheet, they may not be able to bring that to that table. But you as a DM have to recognize, just as much as that burly fighter can basically just kick in a door, that they can look at that person, give them a wink, and and say, I'm going to persuade him to go with our deal. Why? Well, we've done a lot of things. We know him pretty well, and I think he would agree if I just said it right. As a DM, it is up to you to go, his character would probably recognize all of the balls falling into place. Okay, so what you tell him is this. Mm-hmm. And you paint the picture for that player to make them feel like the god that is on the table in front of them. And that's the truth. That is where you as a storyteller can make you swing your axe and slice through one goblin and through that same swing carry through and chop down the wall, which drops drops debris all up. That's the same description as you saying, yeah, you look at him and give him a wink and say, I remembered talking with the Lord Marshal, and he told me about some troops that were heading north. Mm-hmm. I believe you had land in the north, don't you? It would be odd for them to just come marching across that territory unmarked and see your battalion waiting in the keep. That would feel very much like a assault, wouldn't it? Perhaps you should let us go up there and have a conversation with him before he enters that keep. I mean, I bet we could probably do that inspection for him. Mm-hmm. And that wouldn't mean anything for us to walk across your land. That's what you would sell as a DM. Yeah. And that player that character would know that better than the player. And now the player feels like a god again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it takes a special effort. But that's the difference between forcing them to roll on every social roll and recognizing a skilled con man at the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also pulling back and saying, like, whoa, fighter, you can't just chop everybody's head off. That guy's an equal fighter with you. Let's roll this thing.
Right.
Right. So those sections of this really sold it again for me. Just like Stars Without Number sold it on the sci-fi, on a fantasy realm, if you're in fantasy games, buy this book for this section.
Oh, shoot.
You're right there?
Yeah.
I'm trying to knock over the world.
Shifted in my chair, and I hit both my microphone and the stand behind me at the same time.
Just like in Stars Without Numbers, this has faction creation, but the faction creation is fantasy-based. And it is great.
I was really impressed with it.
It's back to the mini game for DMs again, which
I
love.
Yeah.
I mean, that is... oh, God.
It reminded me a lot, too, of, there's that bit of faction creation in The One Ring.
Yes.
RPG.
Yes.
Where like you're creating your hometown and your patron.
Yep.
Sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really what it would have reminded me of. It's a very robust thing. And then there's a mini game too with like, okay, what does your faction do?
Yeah.
What resources do they have? And how do you get your faction to do things for you?
Yeah. What moves can they make?
Right.
And what counter factions are against them? What moves are they making?
Yeah.
And so all these balls can be in play if you want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
If your players need them to be. If your players are now investing in a faction, what are they doing to up the resources? How is that affecting the game?
Yeah.
The pyramid, if you will.
So anybody who wanted to like, we belong to a guild or something like that, like this is... Boom, right here. And I'm pretty sure most of those mechanics can be lifted as well. Like,
all of them.
Yeah.
All of it. Because it's a side game. It does not impact the main... It just impacts story.
Yeah.
I love that. Just like a Doom clock. Just whole cloth, move it.
Yep.
The tables for creating NPCs, monsters, enemies on the fly, fast, easy. And because of the world setting, you can throw anything at this.
Mm-hmm.
You can have demons, you can have otherworldly stuff, you can have other races, you could have aliens. All of it fits because, again, we're far future.
Mm-hmm.
We are well beyond any comprehension of what can or cannot be. And who's to say we're not just a few years away from that here now?
Yeah.
So it makes me stretch my mind into what he's doing for cities,
mm-hmm.
and I love that. I love that where that's going.
Yep.
But there are so many strong proponents in here for using other adventures. They flat out say like, "Hey, whole cloth steal." Like, go find a mines of whatever from a previously highly popular game system with
previously highly popular
that used THACO.
Right.
We'll just use that term, because you can literally just transfer those right in.
Mm-hmm.
And here's how to do it.
Yeah.
Here's how you do the math. Here's how you pull those systems and adventures together so that you can have you can just take that game, put a new skin on it, and throw it in this world. Because it works. All those work in this world easily. Any old school game that you can think of fits. Standard fantasy. That's the beauty. And they unabashedly remind you that you can do this and should do this.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. It does the game system itself is trying to remind you that it is best played as a sandbox. It doesn't want you to do... It's not saying you can't, but it's trying to remind you that the system, the feeling, the mechanics, the gameplay in general fit better with a sandbox design where these players are not the main story. They are moving through a world that is already in motion, and things are happening around them that at such a scale that their actions are heartbeats within the day.
Yeah, Knox in the Box actually in the live chat was asking what kind of genres or themes work best in this system.
Mm-hmm.
And I had typed out to him, I said, the whole OSR genre is very blue-collar.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're not really anyone important. Your task isn't save the world. You're going to have adventures, you'll go places and delve dungeons and fight foes and all that jazz, but, like, rarely will you ever be important enough in all those endeavors to shift the tide of politics in the world,
It's not saying that you can't be a grand hero.
Oh, sure.
There are points in this where they talk about, in building a campaign, like, hey, if you want your players to become grand heroes, you can be that. You can be a Gandalf of this world, where people know your name when you come in because you're of lore and legend. Slightly immortal in most people's eyes, and possibly physically immortal based upon powers and things derived from the world. But again, you are still a player in the motion that is going on around you.
Yeah.
You were barely elevated above normal people.
Yeah.
And I say barely is because you're surviving longer than they would in those situations.
Right. It's like you can be spoken of in the same way that Gandalf is spoken of,
Yes.
Legend, people know your name, but, like, somebody could still put a crossbow bolt in you.
Or kick you off a ledge, you know, and you still fall.
Yeah.
I mean, you may come back. That's a possibility, but the chances...
giant eagles on retainer, you know, but...
But unlike any of the other systems where it's guaranteed that, you know, you drop out of the scene, you'll be back in 3 scenes, that's not a guarantee in this world at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not telling you that you're going to go that way, because it does say, like, hey, if you want to do the count to 10 death, if you want to do the recovery method, those are all fine. Mm-hmm. Tell those stories in a heroic way. That is between you and your players. But we are just as easily saying, roll up a new character sheet and accept it.
Yeah.
But make sure at the beginning of the campaign, everybody is on that page. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the campaign, they may feel differently. Roll with it as best as you feel it.
Yep.
We talked about advancement a little bit. But again, that advancement in the system is still very small.
Yeah. Your XP numbers are very small, and there's not a lot of guidance for how to give out XP as far as, like, hard definitions of things that should give you XP.
Correct.
It leaves a lot of that intentionally up to the storyteller because, again, it truly wants to be a sandbox. It does not want to tell you how to play the game.
Yeah, it wants to give you a lot of tools and a lot of space and say, okay, how is the power curve of your game?
Right.
When will your players be heroes? When will your players be beyond what the world is dishing out?
And you decide what makes a milestone in your game.
Yeah.
You know, is this a combat-based game? Well, maybe you want to give out XP for conquering foes. But if it's a political intrigue game, maybe you want to, you know, give them XP for unraveling mysteries or making bonds with other characters or something like that, you know. And then, I mean, this is a level class-based system, so honestly, I kind of want to just skip over this. Everybody kind of knows class-based, level-based systems. You get experience points, you go up to your next level, you get more hit points, more skill points.
Yeah.
Maybe another focus or something like that. Maybe
Still
a new spell.
Slow curve.
Yeah, sure.
It's not very sharp at all. But the difference between effectively barely better than, you know, your hobos and heroes is short.
Yeah, there's only 10 levels in this game.
Yeah.
And one thing I also did notice is that there's 2 different XP charts. There's a fast XP chart and a slow XP chart. Mm-hmm. And they're not exactly doubled for the slow XP, but you can set it so that if you really want slow progression over multiple game system or game sessions to get to the next level, you can take the slow one, and it'll be like 6 or 15 or something like that to get to your next level, rather than the 3, then 6, then 9, then, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's almost milestone in the way that they kind of show the progression.
Right.
Which I think is great for this system.
Yeah. All right, so you want to go to closing thoughts?
Sure.
All right. So, what does Worlds Without Number do well for you?
Again, I'm just going to say it, buy the book for the kit that's in there.
Oh my God,
the DM's kit is fantastic.
300%, even if you never play a single game of Worlds Without Number proper, the toolkit for running any fantasy game.
You've got your sci-fi kit. You bought it when you got your Stars Without Numbers.
Stars Without Number, yep.
You now have your fantasy kit. Soon you will have your Shadowrun City kit.
Yeah.
Yes. That's happening.
Your Cyberpunk kit,
literally...
right.
90. By the way, the moment that you join the Kickstarter, you get access to the doc that he's working on.
Oh, wow.
And can just immediately copy it and start reviewing it.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. So why not, you know? But the whole thing is that as a book on the shelf, it is worth it.
Yeah.
Every penny you're paying for it.
I really particularly liked that it is fundamentally compatible with Stars Without Number. From the ground up, and so very easy to literally get both of these free systems.
Yeah.
And just be like, yeah, I'm going to smash these 2 books together and we're going to play Spelljammer.
Yeah.
OSR Spelljammer right now, you know?
Yeah. Somebody said once Cities Without Number comes out, you can play the Star Trek The Next Generation and go to different worlds that are at different levels of technology and different things and just experience it all.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, with especially with Cities Without Number, with the addition of, like, cyberware and stuff like that, I mean, ignoring the fact that the Borg are a thing.
Yeah, sure.
But Star Wars becomes a very real possibility.
All of that fits because now you have the ability to do all of the pieces that make all of those things work.
I rolled a mage character out of Worlds Without Number. Oh, you mean a Jedi?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what they call it in this land.
Right.
You know? But again, I love those games that can cross. You know, I'm world hopping. What are we looking for? We're bringing together the gauntlet crystals.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, this world is a fantasy realm. This world is a cyber city. Mm-hmm. This world here is a aliens planet.
This world is a blasted hellscape that has been in war, eternal war for,
and you must fly through the mouth of Cthulhu for the last of it,
Yeah.
And all of that comes together in such a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
So put it on your shelf, have it when you need it. Enjoy it as a storyteller. Read it on a regular basis.
Yeah,
that's right off the bat. I can't say don't buy this book.
For me, I don't particularly jive with the OSR genre.
No,
but I find the Without Number series by Kevin Crawford very easy to get into.
It's palatable to such a nice degree.
Yeah, Worlds Without Number was very palatable to me as an OSR game. It felt comfortable. I liked the low numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the flatter power curve of it. It felt very welcoming for an OSR game, which I think is something that you don't see very often,
Yeah.
OSR games like to kick you where it counts and then tell you to suck it up and rub some dirt in it. And if you're not tough enough to play them, then you should go to a different table and pick a different system.
Yeah.
Go play Care Bear Adventures, Whereas this game was more like, kind of invited you in for tea and was just like, no, it's cool. I mean, it's going to be tough, but it's going to be cool. Don't worry, I got your back.
I feel like we have SW for Savage World. We now have XWN, which is without numbers.
X without numbers. Yeah.
And really, like you're stacking the systems that are the do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? How do you want it to feel?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And it is not unabashedly negative to narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative is there. The narrative is important. The backgrounds are important. The development of character is important. But it is a weight to get into the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that weight is paid very quickly in this. And to make you dive right in. And I like that.
Absolutely.
So, but it is also a compelling world within itself, because without saying you can just do anything you want in this world, just remember it's fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything can be written off as magic, or as a mystery, or as arcane, or as a relic, or whatever. You could wave a hand into that, but instead he makes it compelling. He makes you look at parts of the world differently and doesn't tell you why it turned out that way. So your mind is drawn to what were the machinations that lined up over eons that eventually led to this.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, I don't know. But your brain makes you think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you know that it's eons later. Okay. Nobody cares that it's eons later in this world, except for some sages who are desperately trying to remember the lost tech before, which is a term that falls into so many genres. BattleTech loves using lost tech.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that concept. But it fits very well in that framework.
Yeah, like I said, I got real Numenera vibes from it. From the jump.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that this is really in that sense. In the grand sense of it, you could set the two, Numenera and this, next to each other for world settings and go, I see a lot of similarities.
There's a lot of similarities, but Numenera tried to be weird about it.
They did throw weird.
And they leaned into the weird.
Very much so.
To the, this is a fantastical world that you can't possibly begin to identify because so much time in history, civilizations, 7 civilizations have risen and collapsed in the time that takes place between you and this game.
There were, what it felt like it was 4 breaths away from giving you the explanation for the wacky thing that it just put down. Too bad it died.
Yeah.
The sentence died.
Yeah.
There is a grand X, it does a grand Y, and a weird Z, because... And that's it. Okay, there you go.
Or maybe he died while he was writing it.
Precisely. Whereas this game is just like, yeah, these people live here. They're all miners. They dig for this raw element.
Yeah.
And they have psychic abilities.
Absolutely.
So now in this town...
It feels like you could easily play a game that's like with dinosaurs and warring tribes and stuff like that, but like underneath all of it all, there's like this weird element and, tech rifles and, whatnot. Yeah, you could probably do something like that.
Yeah. Pretty damn easily.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I like that it's compelling. It draws you in, but it also doesn't say that your players don't have the right to say, I am from X, which is different than any of these things, that does Y.
Right.
Okay? Be that person. Enjoy that story. You're welcome to fantasy.
All right, let's skewer this thing.
Okay.
What does it not do well?
It's OSR.
Yeah.
It is not heroic. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels harsh. It feels I'm not going to say grindy, but definitely not to the death level of Morkborg, but definitely within that OSR vibe. It gives it that feel very strongly, and to that, for people who are entering something like this, can feel way more intimidating. The chance of screwing something up feels much more palatable. Like it's right there at the edge of things. From a player's perspective, right? So selling this system as something that is heroic doesn't fit very well because it's not. Trying to say that this could create an epic saga for your characters as they ascend to godhood isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And for that reason, it isn't D&D. But man, does it feel like what D&D could have been.
Yeah.
Like if second edition didn't.
Yeah,
move on.
It's one of those things that like I almost want to chalk it up as a positive that it doesn't reach for ironically enough, doesn't reach for the stars.
No.
But for some people, that's going to be a limiting factor.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So yeah, definitely going to put that down as one thing it does not do well. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do high epic fantasy well.
No, you're not going to have a game of political intrigue within this.
Yeah.
That is going to be a challenge. At the same time, like, you're also not going to have a pulpy dance of hijinks in this either. You could, in theory, but it would feel very odd against the system.
Yeah.
You would struggle.
And then one other thing that I think is probably maybe a weakness of this book is that, dead honest, I've been doing this for a long time. I've looked at numerous other systems. We've done numerous other systems for system spotlights on this show, and I cracked open the world building section of this book and was intimidated. I was absolutely blown away by the amount of options, but at the same time, I looked at it and was just like, this is so much.
Do I have to do all of this?
Not only do I have to do all of this, but it's just charts upon charts upon charts upon charts upon charts upon charts upon charts. And it started to feel a little overwhelming. Not only do I have to do all of this, but like, how do I find anything amongst this? And
okay, I get that.
Understanding it is indexed in the PDF and stuff.
Very well
so. I mean, yeah, it's not that I couldn't do a search function for it, but like at a certain point, when you literally take the scroll bar on a PDF and just scroll it down,
209 pages,
and and all you just see is just flicking by you. Literally every frame of animation that is rendering on your screen is chart. Yeah, it's you start kind of going a little cross-eyed looking at it. So. And then lastly, I would say like the human-centric story. I tend to like those because I play a lot of humans in D&D because I find them very identifiable. I figure I'm already suspending my disbelief for the world and the magic and all that jazz. Trying to imagine my character as a species that I don't identify with is another step of disbelief I have to suspend.
Yeah.
So I tend to like human-centric, but I understand that there are a lot of people who think the exact opposite of me. And that is, I'm a human every day of the week. I didn't show up to your fantasy game to play a human.
Exactly. No, and I agree with that sentiment. Is that it does feel heavily limiting, and almost like super sapien.
Yeah.
In that sense, like humans are superior when they're not.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't ever make that claim, and I do kind of want to shy away from that because there are implications I don't like about supremacy.
I don't think it was supremacy.
Yeah,
this game does not give any supremacy angles as far as any feeling
exactly.
I have.
And I want to be very clear about that.
It just basically says we are simplifying things.
Exactly.
We don't want to make this that challenging.
There's enough going on in this world without introducing elves and dwarves and gnomes and all of their own little cultures and political machinations. Like, let's just do some weird fantasy stuff with humans.
Yeah. Let's just keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Believe me, there's enough weirdness among humans.
The world is big enough.
Yeah. Let's not add another layer of racism on top of that. So.
All right, let's get some questions.
Yes. Hulavu. Might be too generic, but do we want to put this one right at the beginning?
Sure, go for it. Let's just read them off.
With all the people looking to switch from 5e, what are some tips for GMs running systems that they've never played before? I had some thoughts on this.
GMs running systems they've never played before. Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
So, my whole thing, and we've gone over this multiple times, we're talking about new systems, is you have to understand the key elements of the system to be able to run it. If you don't have that down in your head as a storyteller, you are never going to be able to convey it.
What is the system trying to do? How does the system want you to play it?
Yeah, there's and I'm talking about two different pieces. One that you do inherently, which is this is a D20 system. I roll this dice, I add these things. Did I achieve my goal by going over a number? That is a system. This is how it happens. And then there's, by doing that, is this system trying to say survive by hit points? Is it attrition of resources? Must I return home? Like, what is the sales pitch of the mechanic?
Yes.
So there's two pieces there to know as a storyteller. Once you have those and you slap those together, you know that system well enough to sell the system. I am not saying it is required. I am saying that if you don't have those two pieces before you sit down in front of your group, selling the system and those first couple game sessions is going to be very challenging.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah. Fewer players, when they first sit down at a new game, even think about the rules at all. They build their character and learn the rules from the character perspective in most cases, because they have an idea of a character and then either go two directions. One, this is the image of the character I want to build, or this is the perfection of the character that I wish to build. And they'll look at it either by numbers and perfection, or throughout, how does everything fit together to make this happen? Tell me.
Yeah.
And they want to know those two things. So that is the angle you have. So they never get to the system mechanics until you present it to them. So a lot of times storytellers will immediately say, oh, it's not D&D because it's not D20. Okay, you've just lost your players in most cases. They don't care about that. They care about, can I play my character in this world? Like, what is the limitations? Like, hey, I want to play a fire mage who is clumsy as hell. Yeah, you can do it. Okay, no problems. We got that.
Yep.
Oh, is it a specific kind of fire mage? No, you're a fire mage. Okay, great. There you go. Done.
Yeah.
All right, no big deal. And that's the whole thing, is that if they can be who they want to be, or, whether it's finite and precision and rolled to a certain direction, or narratively crafted in a certain direction, that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're switching from 5e, figure out whatever system, how those mechanics work, and then listen to your players in the transition of what they want to be in this world, in that system, and make sure you understand how to draw them in without pigeonholing them. Let them build it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say the other big piece of advice I would give is, in researching your new system, try to find an actual play of it.
That's always a great idea.
Because there's a lot of things that, like, you can read the mechanics for a dozen times over, and you might know where all the numbers end up and how all the dice roll, but seeing how that system is intended to be employed within the scope of a story and at a table with actual players engaging with it may look different than it does in your mind just reading the mechanics of it.
My caveat to that is if one of those Let's Plays involves the designer, watch that and then watch someone that does not have the designer.
You're correct, yes.
Because you will find that those two games are very different.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Go watch a 7th Sea with John Wick. Go watch a 7th Sea without John Wick. Those two systems, you'll think they're two different systems.
Yeah, one of them, everybody's dead. Different John Wick.
Different John Wick, but not so different. I mean, it is 7th Sea, not that many people die in it. So,
all right. So Hulu also asks, what elements in Worlds Without Number would be familiar to 5th Ed players, which are going to be more?
Which ones are going to be more of a stretch for them to learn?
I would say, for me, my answer is both of the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that everything in 5th E is familiar from the idea of you want to hit or exceed an armor class. Your stats are the same.
Yeah.
A lot of your skills are essentially familiar. How those things add up, your bonus plus your attribute bonus plus your die roll to exceed a target number. All those mechanics translate over directly. However, it's a double-edged sword in that all those mechanics are slightly different.
Narrowed.
Yeah. Your power curve's a lot flatter. Your spell lists are a lot shorter. Your numbers are a lot lower. Your skill points are a lot fewer.
Your TN is easier to calculate.
Right, and sometimes those and you're not going to be using a D20 for all of those. So
which throws off a lot of people.
It's familiar enough that you think you know what's going on, but that's also the trick that you think you know what's going on, therefore you do the wrong thing because you do the D&D thing and not the Worlds Without Number thing.
I think it's also the D&D to Pathfinder problem in many cases.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I think if you had players who are going from D&D to Pathfinder or D&D to Worlds Without Number, you're going to run the same issues.
Yeah.
Literally almost the same issues.
Yep.
But I will say that it is lighter. Overall, the rules are lighter. The transition is to a lighter mechanic set.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that you can easily sell.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Can transition a character from one to the other.
Easily.
Very easily. And say, okay, yeah, you don't have all of these things, but the world doesn't need it.
Yeah, exactly.
We've just simplified things from you.
You don't need to be able to soar through the air, get 17 different attacks, and call down lightning from the sky while you're doing it.
Yep. You can explain that to me. It could happen, but that's not the roles that we need to make.
Right.
The Mad Elf steps even further away from topic a little bit here, but funnily stepped in at a very interesting time, and I'd love to tell the story about this one. What is your top 2nd, 3rd, and 4th game systems? Noting that he did not say top first.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. Okay, I think there was supposed to be a comma there. I think it was top, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Okay.
I think that was the implication, but I
the
know
comedy is literally just before.
I was like, did he only want 2nd, 3rd, and 4th? Like, does he know what our first game is?
Well,
I mean, everybody does. It's Savage Worlds.
It's Savage Worlds. Always play Savage Worlds. Don't ever play any other system. It was funny that literally 5 minutes before this hit, I had sent Sarah a Reddit thread where somebody had literally done every response that normally comes through on r/RPG.
Yeah, I'm looking for a game that does this. And it's like, what are the top 10 responses you're going to get?
It was system. It was by system all the way down, and it was so perfect.
Oh, so
I was
funny.
like, hey, Sarah, your response number 7.
Yeah, response number 7 was Savage Worlds. The answer is always Savage Worlds.
And then there was another one and another one. And then it was 9, GURPS.
The answer is always GURPS.
But all of them were so succinct. It was literally just a sentence response for each one of them, and they were exactly as the predominant tropey response for each one of those.
It's funny.
Like D&D could be anything you want it to be,
But we were laughing because it was like, oh god, they've got us pegged because we're the Savage Worlds is always the answer crowd now all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, really, we're just gonna change the show to Savage Worlds is the system you should play. All of our 202s are gonna be here's how you convert your game to Savage Worlds from X system.
Changing the name of the podcast to Savage Conclave. You know. So
no, I think there are plenty of game systems out there. We will be playing more of them.
No, absolutely.
So, Sarah, what's on your list?
All right. So he asked for favorite game systems.
Yes.
And this was a really difficult question because
we haven't gotten to play a lot.
Well, first off, I mean, I've got a long history of playing different games, but here's the thing of it is that I started thinking that, like, there are games that I've played a lot of, but I wouldn't say they're my favorite systems. Like, I've played a lot of very mediocre systems.
Well,
but I've played quantifiably a lot of them. You know, I played White Wolf for a long time, and I would not rank that in my top 5. You know,
no, definitely.
But it was what everybody else was playing, and we told some interesting stories with it. You know, it was what was available.
Very much so. Very much so.
So number 1, of course, is Savage Worlds.
Yeah, you're loving it.
Extraordinarily versatile and pulpy, which is what I really like in a storytelling.
No, I agree. I think that's fantastic for you.
Following up on the pulp, I'm going to follow that with number 2. Dipping into White Wolf's pulp system, Adventure Tales of the Aeon Society.
Still very pulpy. You like your game systems like you like your orange juice, full of pulp.
And I do. And the thing I think I like the most about that is that it not only does it have a pulpy feel like Savage Worlds does, but is literally set in the pulp genre in that it takes place in the 20s and 30s. And very much designed to tell those types of stories, and I think it's underrepresented in the tabletop role playing game.
I think that the 20s and 30 pulp tends to go detective.
Yeah,
and adventure is not.
Yeah, no,
it is not.
It's a lot more
heroic. Honestly,
Mummy, Indiana Jones. Style stuff.
My classic heroism. Yeah.
Third one on my list I'm going to say is Mouse Guard. Mouse Guard is a game I've gotten to play because of the Mad Elf. The more I play it, the more I love the way that it breaks out of the typical mold of TTRPGs around it. That, you know, it's a big idea of failing forward, of, you know, failure is not a thing. It's always just an advance in the story. That not passing a roll, you know, a check on the roll is necessary to advance. We learn from our failures. And in fact, you gain advancement, you know, personally by complicating things for other people.
Yeah.
And it makes you very comfortable with the idea of conflict and failure as motivators in a story rather than something to be feared because, oh God, if I fail this roll, we're just going to die. Only bad things come from failing a roll. It's not like that.
No.
The story always goes forward, and that's a big thing that Mouse Guard has taught me, and it's gotten me very comfortable with the idea of, and so that's why it sits on that list. And then lastly, my number 4 slot is Dread. Because as a game system, anytime you start and end that conversation with, it's a Jenga tower. Honestly, that's just such an inventive mechanic that I've never seen replicated anywhere else. And how that Jenga tower is used to produce a survival horror effect of inevitable failure. Every test makes that tower more flimsy, and failure more inevitable the next time around is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Is just brilliant.
It's a visible, physical, emotional attachment.
You can see that thing teetering, and it creates dread in you just knowing that it's sitting on the table. And if somebody breathes wrong at a certain point, it could fall, you know?
Yeah.
It just as far as just sheer inventiveness of the game mechanics and how effectively they do the job that they're set out to do, Dread sits at my number 4 spot.
Okay. I would have normally put 7th Sea at the top, but we are talking about systems.
Yeah.
So I like Savage World as a system. I want to run Savage World as a system, but enjoying it as a player, it has been incredible.
Yes.
I like it. It's currently sitting in the number 1 position. I don't know if it will stay there.
Sure.
But at the moment, that's where I still put 7th Sea First Edition in the 2nd slot. And the reason for that is because I love the heroism that is apparent at all times, and that terms like drama, that you're giving drama and getting drama, and that there's a pool of it that sits there. This concept is so visceral within the way that the game is played that you can't ignore it. It has to sit there and bind with the story, and that the elements of the story that make up the mechanics are bound into the world. It's all this goopy mess of mechanics and world building all in one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's something beautiful about that. And I love that. You know, you can't just extract it and say, oh, I could put this in any other system and it's agnostic. No,
it's really not. It's very baked into the world of Thea.
Yeah. And taking things out of it, you have to take it whole cloth. You can't just extract the colon of this and say everything's going to be okay. It's not.
Right.
Like, it'll fall apart. So there's something special about that to me.
The colon, that's Porte, right?
Yes. very much so. Yeah. Mouse Guard has such a system that's embedded with it as well, but I feel that there are so many wonderful components that you look at each piece, and it doesn't say that it's Mouse Guard, but it is. It is imprinted within.
It feels like Mouse Guard.
It's imprinted, and we had on the Plangea system, and we talked to the creator there, and I looked back at Mouse Guard, and I realized that the metal is there.
Yeah.
It is a different kind of metal. It is the mouse.
Yeah.
And I was
so
like...
The cheese is there.
It's sad to say, but true.
Yeah.
But it gives the game so much teeth. If you look at everything
Tiny
in it,
little teeth.
Yeah. It's there. And it's like, okay, it was there originally, and it's owned, and it's beautiful. But I agree with you. The whole concept of not only spending your traits to do something heroic for yourself in a scene because it's applicable. You know, like, well, I'm brave. Okay, that applies to the scene.
Sure.
Have an extra die. You know, that simple mechanic is expending a part of your character's soul into the game. And that's rare in any other system.
But at the same time, using that then to complicate somebody else of like, oh, my character is, determined. Just absolute attention to detail and just want to be on this. So I'm going to be micromanaging your entire plan and bugging the crap out of you.
Yeah.
Subtract a die.
Right.
You know?
But it still counts as a step forward for you to advance.
Exactly.
And to be able to do things in other parts of the story. And that right there is a mechanic that, again, you look at each piece of this and you realize how much it is about telling the story of the adventurers.
Yes.
And I say, there is no reason why that can't be extracted and
used.
absolutely.
And
should be.
Absolutely.
And should be.
Absolutely.
And so I look at that system and I constantly look at angles of it different ways, and I'm like, I don't want to extract it from Mouse Guard because it's so beautiful there. But you can't deny that it needs to be there.
Yeah.
So again, like 7th Sea, it's bound into what makes it. And then the last one, I just find beauty in the narrative of Urban Shadows.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's something to be said at looking at the contemporary fantasy that incorporates every fantasy trope in such a wonderful package.
Yeah.
And then sells it to you as, this is your world. Tell me what's going on. Like, I'm not going to tell you what city you're in and what's happening in that city. I'm going to give you all of the tool sets and give you the feeling of all those pieces and then say, what are these cogs doing in this city? What's breaking down? What's working?
Yeah.
And let the players build that. And again, that's another thing that's baked into that mechanic, but you look at that and you say, as a mechanic, you're like, ooh, I have some great storytellers that I sit down with. I want them to do this.
Play to find out.
Yeah. And it's so rich to be able to do that. And you know me, again, I flip right to story sections of mechanics to figure out what the developer felt about that.
Oh yeah, sure.
And as much as OSR is about, hey, build a dungeon and go run it, you know, this game that we just reviewed, it again comes back and says, I'm going to help you understand what are the minimums that you need. Grab 2 tags. Doesn't matter which 2. You now have something.
Yeah.
Go to town.
Yep.
I'm going to give you all kinds because your brain's going to go wild, and I'm going to help guide you through that. But seriously, start simple. Here's the things I'm going to help you with.
Yeah, right on.
And any system, like especially with like Urban Shadows, is it hands you that same kind of mechanic and lets you run with it, and you can't deny those.
Right on.
So
right on. So he says same question, but about game settings.
I think we kind of broke that down, but I will hit mine fast.
But this is settings.
Right.
This is settings.
This is just settings.
Completely divorced from game mechanics, because for me there are some horrible game mechanics attached to some really cool settings out there.
Yeah, like 7th Sea's at my top from settings because I really love just getting back to children's books and history
adventure
slapped
on
together.
Pirates of the Caribbean style, yeah, absolutely.
It's childhood wrapped up in a nice blanket and given to you as an adult.
Yeah, who doesn't like pirate high adventure in the 17th century?
Shadowrun's epic, straight up. Like you can't deny that. Cyberpunk is epic.
And then you add magic and fantasy creatures to it.
And then
even
somehow
more epic.
slap it on top of it on what happened to the world, and you're like, all this makes sense.
Right. There's a dragon running a megacorp. I don't know how you get more metal than that.
That is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Dune and BattleTech both sit in the same place in my headspace.
Okay.
I love knowing those settings and being like, ooh, there's so much to touch there on a macro and a micro level.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know where you want to sit. Do you want to play it at, battle fleet level, or do you want to play it at the individual who's sneaking into something?
Sure.
Both of those are there as a setting, and you're like, oh, there's so much richness, And then Numenera really intrigued me, but same with this, that far human future of fantasy.
Yeah, right.
Where it's like, you're not sure how far you are.
Uh-huh.
Or if you're, I don't know, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
I mean, that fits just as easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's that weird humanity is here, but where is here?
Right.
And that's beautiful. That's beautiful for me too.
So for me, my absolute top one, I'm going to come back to BattleTech Mech Warrior.
You freaking love it.
I had this great conversation with a friend of mine, where you go online and you see all these other fandoms out there, and you see people who are just like cosplaying and creating, fanfic and, just really engaging, fan art and just engaging with their fandom in just these really intense ways. And like, I don't think I've ever been that enthusiastic about anything to want to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I in contrast, you begin to feel a little bit like, wait, am I just dead inside? Like that I just can't experience joy like that, in such an unbridled and creative sense, And this friend took me aside, and they were like, "No, you're not dead inside." And I'm like, "I know, but I feel that way. Like I've never felt those intense feelings." And she turns to me and goes, "Well, which BattleTech house are you?" And I'm like, "House Davian, definitely." She's like, "There's your thing. It's just you need to know which thing is yours. Like, you're not that way about Harry Potter. Nope. You're not that way about Disney or, Star Wars or anything like that. Those aren't your things. BattleTech is your thing." Like, you knew that answer.
But if I, bought you a Steiner, emblem and asked you to put it on your car, you would spit on it, throw it on the ground, and light it on fire.
Right, yeah.
I would respect that.
I would doodle a little sunburst around it and be like, there, now it's Federated Suns. Now we can deal with this. And I would know to do that because BattleTech is my thing.
Right.
So that my first love, my best love, BattleTech. Yeah. My second in line is going to be the Aeonverse. Okay, and this is the universe that Adventure takes place in.
Over the entire thing.
Right, but Adventure, Trinity, and Aberrant are all, not in that order, are all part of the same universe. Yeah. I didn't take to Trinity too much, but I really love the characters and the origins of how how Adventure comes to be, and then how that turns into Aberrant in the quote-unquote present day.
Yeah.
And that whole story was very compelling. The setting was very captivating to me, regardless of the game mechanics attached to it.
I feel like it missed out on the Buck Rogers future.
Maybe, but
it was superhero, so
Well, the thing was, it wasn't superheroes.
Right.
There's literally a sidebar in the Aberrant book that says this is not Super Friends.
Right.
Because it was supposed to be about telling very human stories.
Yes.
Like the show Heroes actually came very close to the feel of what an Aberrant game should be.
Right.
Which is, you're a normal dude who suddenly turned into lightning one day.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. You don't get a super suit and everybody just suddenly accepts you as a superhero. It doesn't work that way.
This isn't the DC universe where suddenly it's like, oh, there he is. Is he a bird? Is he a plane? I don't know.
Right.
It's like, no, you just turned into living lightning. You should really figure out what to do with that. Oh, and there are about 17 people who just have a political opinion about your place in the world now.
And where you belong.
Exactly.
Most of those are fearful.
And then third on my list, Shadowrun.
Yep.
For all the stated reasons. There is a dragon running a megacorp. How do you get more metal than that?
Yeah.
But again, this is probably the biggest example of love the setting, hate the game.
Yeah, no, fair. That's fair.
Like,
that's fair.
FASA could not write a rule system to save their lives, but man, the setting was so cool. And then, I'm going to have to go with Call of Cthulhu because I'm just a gigantic Lovecraft fangirl.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love Lovecraftian horror. I love that whole thing. Lovecraft, always with the disclaimer, was an absolutely crappy, garbage human being. But man, some of the legacy he left with his stories and the imaginations he sparked in other people and how we continue to build upon that idea of eldritch horror.
The unspeakable, the unknowable.
Really, really inspires me.
That's awesome.
Really inspires me.
All right. Nevim, as always. Is Worlds Without Numbers a system compatible with Stars Without Numbers and thus being able to play some space fantasy games? 100%. 100%. You could take Worlds Without Number and throw the stuff into Stars Without Numbers and have Star Wars right now, without question. Go for it. Have fun. You could do it. Everything's compatible. No question about it. So we kind of answer that easy. What aspects of this book are useful for other games? The entire 209 pages of the DM section. Just buy the book for that. If you don't want it for anything else, buy the book for that.
Literally everything that isn't the core mechanics. Yes,
just literally steal
which is
it.
most of the book.
Yeah. Steal everything within that section.
Yeah.
and write it off as a DM tool.
This is probably like whole cloth the most useful game agnostic book I've ever seen.
Yeah. That has a system attached to it that if you'd like to play, go right ahead. But like everything in it is useful. Everything. Mm-hmm. And enjoy it. Like I would never tell someone to not buy this book. For anything. There's too much of value in here. Enjoy it. So we have one of our new listeners, relatively new listeners, Articus. Am I saying that right? Yes.
Arcticus. Yes.
Worlds Without Number and other Worlds Without Number games is a fairly simple system that gives you lots of room for porting over mechanics and content from the systems. Are there any rules, mechanics, ideas, or content you'd bring over to enhance Worlds Without Number game? So, I think that
you and I have the same answer.
Is that this is OSR. It is meant to be a simple system.
Yeah.
I think by incorporating other things into the system,
you change it from being OSR.
Correct.
And fundamentally change the feel of the game.
Correct.
Yes.
And I think that is the part that you have to be exceptionally careful about. Now, are there things that you could bring in that would be narrative aspects that this game might lack and that your players may need as tool sets? For instance, interludes is something you could agnostically bring in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great mechanic to bring in to help with narrative roleplay where players maybe not getting into character as well as you'd like them to. Maybe you're trying to have a little, like, get them to know each other better and have stories. Interludes might be a good thing to bring in there.
Yeah.
But I think anything that doesn't add or enhance the narrative side of this, that focuses on mechanical changes, are a failure. I think you're going to run amok because it is meant to be OSR for OSR, and without keeping that core element, you're trying to turn it into something that it is not.
Yeah. Acknowledging that it would fundamentally change the feel of the game, the only answer I could come up with was Benny's.
Yeah.
Because we're playing your Dungeons and Dragons game the other day, and just abjectly failing a role that I feel was very important and core to my character, advancing her story, felt bad.
Yeah.
And I found myself going, God, I wish I had a Benny to spend to just re-roll that.
Yeah.
Just get another stab at it.
Yeah.
It's not a guaranteed. It's basically your luck points, but everybody kind of gets them,
Yeah. I would twist that as well to say, because this game has so many environmental holes in it that says that this is at some abject point in history, maybe you could have a token system for narrative editing.
Yeah.
Like Adventure does.
Sure.
Where if you're doing something, a player does something exceptional in a narrative sense within the tactical side of the game or within an aspect of the game, or they're playing toward values of their character or an aspect of their character, give them a Benny that allows them to do an edit. within the story that changes the narrative. It may not change the consequences, that there's a consequence for an action, but it may open something. For instance, when their axe gets lodged in the ground because they failed a strike horribly or whatever, right? They decide to spend a token because it cracks open the ground, and within it they find another chamber.
Sure.
Fantastic.
Sure.
That's great. It's a narrative change. Everything moves on.
Yep.
And I like those types of aspects because, again, it opens that creative, that narrative part of the story and allows the players to express something as well. You could technically, if you wanted to, change the power curve of the game by having those be spent at the end of the game for experience.
Yeah, that would drastically change the power curve of the game.
It would, but it would also, if you were prepared for it, you could say that this is a heroic style game, that I'm looking for good role play, and I'll give you bennies for good role for playing your characters and their failures.
And honestly, I think that's even fitting in the spirit of Worlds Without Number. They really want to give you a toolkit and don't want to tell you how to play the game.
Yep.
That's why there is so little guidance on what should give you experience.
Right.
I don't know what kind of game you're running.
Right.
What do you want to emphasize? If you want to throw something like that in and then have that used as experience at the end of the game, cool. It's your game.
Yep.
We're just giving you the tools to play it.
Yep.
Go for it.
And I think that's the heart of it. I think that's where I would come off on any alterations to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right, we have gone for an hour and 50 minutes.
Holy
at this
Lord,
point.
look at that. It says 2 hours on the recording.
Yeah, well, that's because you started with the pre-show music 10 minutes early, so...
Yeah, so, wow.
It is time we wrap this up. Our next week's topic is going to be skills that you can, as a storyteller, you can take away from the table. Does all this time playing Dungeons & Dragons and other great games with your friends do anything for you? Actually, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, and we're going to help outline some of those things, because you may be... I don't know, young and thinking, what will I be able to do with all this in the future?
There is a joke post that goes around that's how to put D&D on your resume, and it's really only kind of half joking because legitimately there are some real good skills. So,
no, 100% agree with that.
So we're going to talk about that next week for our next week's topic. Other than that, though,
there we go.
All right, you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. Shoot us some questions. Join this great discussion with all the other storytellers out there. We'd love to hear from you. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
Yeah, we've had a number of new people join our Discord. We're so glad to have all of you. We'd love to have more, honestly. Ask your questions. Join us. If you really do enjoy the podcast, we'd ask you to join our Patreon and help us out with that.
This is not the updated Patreon list. I apologize for that.
Oh, it is our old list. Well, we have a number of named members who are at that rank. Knox in the Box, Sam, Subjet, The Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion, Vedran, Hulavu, and Sean. We really do appreciate all of
I think that's the full list.
I know.
Awesome.
I've almost memorized all of it. Our pre-show music is by Arcade Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/Arcade Anthems or on Instagram. I do hope you check them out. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
Big shout out, as always, to our families, Vicky and Sean, who thank you so much for loving us and supporting us and bearing with us as we record this for an hour and 50 minutes.
It's true.
All of our friends who sat beside our tables for all these have these great stories to share with you over the years, and you, every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Love you. Good night.